She's not what you'd expect. She's tough and feisty, but gentle and tender. She makes millions and gives millions to the poor. She cries, she laughs, she teaches, she comforts. This is the Dani Johnson Show.
We're going to talk about scaling a business. That's most of what we're going to talk about today. There's a book that I would recommend for those of you, whether you have a small business that you work from home or you have a business that you have an office for. If I were a direct seller full-time, I would also read this book because there's a lot that I did when I was in direct sales that was in this book. When I first got started in that industry, there was a concept about McDonald's that was presented, and for some reason, it just clicked in my head, and it made absolute perfect sense. And since that time, 29 and a half or whatever years ago, that has been my aim, and that's been my focus. I built my business very methodically. I didn't build it sporadically. I built it very methodically. And part of that is because of, obviously, my personality, that pretty much everything I do is rather methodical. And I love processes and systems and things that are just really, really simple. So I want to introduce to you today some concepts that are just that. Just if you want to grow your business, you want to scale a business, there has to be processes in place that are duplicatable. A lot of people don't grow because they have no processes in place that are duplicatable. But what they do have is they might have a very excited, charismatic leader who started the thing, who grabbed their cojones and took a bunch of risk and mortgaged the house to start something, and they're the ones leading it. And then as it grows, now they're managing it and leading it and growing it. And pretty soon you run out of hours in a day because those three things are 3 full-time jobs. So you eventually run out of time and you're draining out your talent, and now the owner has to become many different jobs, meaning wear several different hats, and it's usually the management type hats that generally get that owner down and weigh the owner down, and now they lose the inspiration, now they lose the vision, now they even almost lose the ability to recruit new business because they're just discouraged because they're weighed down with all the heaviness of business. And I noticed that also in direct sales. It happens pretty much in every kind of, and even happens in churches, even happens in foundations. It actually happens in families also. I'm literally watching right now where my family is, where, you know, there's that first generation, me and Hans, right? And then there was 5 kids, right? And now the 5 kids, we've got one who has 6 kids. We've got one that has 2 kids. I've got one that's married with no kids, working on having kids daily, from what I understand. Very, very proud of my son and daughter-in-law. And then, and now I have this new set of, I have a new daughter-in-love coming into the family, and Roman, right? And then Micah, who is like not even close to interested in anything, which I'm super grateful for, sort of. I just want lots of grandkids, okay? So my goal is 25 of these things, right? So it is, that's my goal. So here's what I want to show you, because really, it's really amazing to me how the structure is just the similar, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Then here's my oldest who went hog wild. Wait, that's 6. Okay, Erica, all right? So now, sorry, there's poop. Well, no, hold on. Caca. I'm sorry, this is wrong. Christina does not have 6 husbands, although she has been married a few times. my poor kid. Okay, so now Christina's got this generation, you know, Erica married, Cabe married, Roman's about to get married. So that's like another layer. You see what I mean? So there's the original 5 kids, and then each one of them are going to add, hopefully, just one. And then from these 2 is like these 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, Erica and Zach have 2. So as you can see, this thing's going to get wider and wider and deeper. As they go deeper, it's going to get wider, I'll just say that. Yeah, as it goes deeper, it definitely goes wider. Just keeps growing. So this happens in a business as well. I mean, a family structure is the same as a business structure. A business structure, whether it's a direct sales structure, right, or you know, a regular corporation like our company, right? So, you know, my husband and I started this. I'm now the primary person of running this. Well, actually, originally, First Steps, I started it and started my training and management company. But when we came together and partnered up 14 years ago to do it together. But, you know, I have 3 directors that report to me, right? And then each one of these directors have people that report to them, and it just keeps going. Do you know what I mean? So like each person kind of manages around 4 to 5 people inside of our organization. So what happens is that information gets less and less effectively passed down through the organization. There's less and less time in personal relationship, right? So meaning once our kids get married, right, you sign up your first 5 reps, you hire your first 5 employees, right? As the organization grows, there's more and more people added within the organization. So there's less and less personal relationship the further and bigger the organization gets, right? So usually what happens with that, if there's not processes and systems in place, like for example, in our family, we have a yearly family office meeting. Okay, so and why do we do that? To make sure that the values, first of all, to make sure that the focus and the vision for the family is going to be generational. So this is a tradition that gets started. That's a yearly meeting, a yearly summit meeting that we have. But on a weekly basis, as moms in town, we have a meeting every Friday night. It's called Shabbat, where I make homemade bread, I make a big lavish meal. We get together every week to keep the family together. And by the way, there's one more kid over here that is at Shabbat every week, and that's Isa. So initially when we first got her, I said, man, you're like the furniture. You just around all the time. And she was just like the rest of the kids. She walks in the house, opens the fridge to see if there's anything to eat. She still does it to this day. Anyway, so what's important when you build an organization is you have to maintain communication through that organization. And you have to make sure that people are trained up to be able to communicate on behalf of the company, on behalf of the vision, on behalf of the mission. And so when a business is small, when it's just you and a couple people, that's easy to get the communication through. But as you're adding customers, as you're adding employees, or as you're adding distributors to the organization, now there has to be some kind of organization for the organization. Does that make sense? So a lot of people just tend to just go blow out and add a bunch of people, and usually what happens is that the owner is the one, the charismatic leader of the sales force, the charismatic leader of the church or of the company. They undoubtedly end up just adding more and more and more and more hours to their day, splitting their time in lots of different places, and losing their focus of the bigger vision and getting tied down to little menial things simply because there is no duplicatable systems in place. So really the issue here is this. What is your goal with your business? If you don't have a goal for that career, this thing's gonna go and morph into lots of different forms. So you have to decide in advance, what is that goal? You see, for me, when Hans and I got together and he brought me to meet his grandparents, who was who? Like, here's his dad and his mom, and then above his dad was Grandpa and Grandma Johnson. When I met them, I finally got a vision for my family. They had 6 children, and at that time, 30 some odd grandchildren. Grandpa and Grandma both have now passed. He just passed away a year ago, May. 87 descendants from the 2 of them. So when I met them and I saw everyone congregated around them, this was my vision. Like, that's what I want. I want no less than 25 grandkids. And it was just Hans and Erica and I, and that was it at the time. So when you figure out what you want, then you have to decide, what does that look like? So a lot of people build businesses having no idea where it's actually going. So this is how we end up quitting businesses. This is how we end up recruiting the wrong kind of talent. This is how we end up with the wrong kinds of systems, and usually, which means no systems at all in place. So if you don't know where you want to go, you certainly can't pitch that to anybody. And you don't know what kind of talent that you actually need in order to make that thing happen. So just like with your family, just like with your job, just like with a home business, just like with a regular business, I don't even call it regular business, they're all businesses. And I strongly recommend that you guys stop calling your business a home business. That is a term from about 14 years ago. And I actually started that term and started that trend. Yeah, purging, exactly. You are in business. Whether you market somebody else's product or you invented a product, you are in business. If you are somebody who is selling something to someone, guess what? You're in business. That's what you have. You have a business. And so call it what it is. This is a business. I work with a business, or I work for a business, or I have a business. I chose, when I worked in the direct sales industry, part of it was because I was young. I didn't tell anyone I owned a business. And at the time, I actually owned, because a year later, after anyway, whatever. 2 years in, I started manufacturing my own products. And I started a second business within my first year. So where are you going with your business? And what kind of talent do you need? Where are you going? What kind of talent do you need? Do you even know what that is? So to scale a business, and this is a book that I recommend that you get a hold of, and I don't care what kind of business you have, because even for those of you that are a part of direct sales, this will open your mind to some things that actually really apply to what you do. And that book is called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. Scaling Up. Now, for you emeralds, you're going to love that book. As man, for me, I was just like, yes. It was a love letter for me. It was. It's a textbook. It's basically like a textbook, and all the sapphires went, oop, I don't think I'll read that. Don't worry, there's lots of stories in the book too, and there is a story version of that book as well for all of you rubies and sapphires, and that would be the Rockefeller Habits. So it's based off of John D. Rockefeller, right, who had built a business like a long time ago, and it is still alive. It's still here. It's still one of the largest corporations in the world today. John D. Rockefeller. The guy's been dead for a really, really long time. So he had systems in place that helped to duplicate, first of all, and keep his values all the way through the company all these years, to keep the vision alive all these years, an insane amount of billions, multi-billions and billions of dollars that have been generated even after he's dead. So how many of you would like to have something that lasts beyond you? Maybe it doesn't have to go to billions of dollars. I don't have a desire for making billions of dollars. I'll let somebody else go do that. I don't want to carry that. That's not my call, if you will. However, 100 million would be fun to give away. You know, my goal is to give 100 million. My goal is to give $1 million a month away. That's my goal. I forgot to tell you. Last week we wrote checks for 420? Yeah, 420, between $420 and $450,000 to the poor. Yeah, I'm like sitting there going, this is like amazing to me. Yeah, no, I think it was 464 or something like that. I wish I had my phone still because the message is in there. But, so where are you going and what do you want to do? How big do you want your business? And by the way, bigger is not necessarily better. Do you hear me? Rubies, design what you really want. And sapphires, don't feel like you have to keep up with the rubies. Be like sober-minded when you decide this this business and where you want it to go and the size that you actually want it to be. You know, we've calculated that for us to get to our 100 million lives changed, we're going to have like over 200 employees. That scares the bejeebies out of me. Like, that is not at all appealing to me personally. It's not. I hate that idea, actually. However, 100 million lives is really important to me, so I have to be willing to learn what it takes to be able to be the head of an organization that has over 200 employees. Okay, the good side is that we'll provide jobs for over 200 people. That's cool. And that means that I have to recruit the best possible talent to manage that organization. Because Dani Johnson isn't all of a sudden going to work 60 hours a week. Not after 21 years of working less than 20. 20 most of the time in the last 3 years, 5 hours a month, generally. That's not all of a sudden going to happen. So you got to base on where you want to go based on who you are, what your vision is, and what you're willing to do to get yourself there. That's really important. So what are the things that have to be scaled? All right, so you remember we talked about exposure. We exhausted exposure on Saturday, okay? We talked about connecting to the prospect, right? Connecting to the what? List of resources, right? The list of resources can come a number of different ways. It can come from your warm market. Again, that's your own personal list of names. It can come from what we call lukewarm market. That's what I demonstrated on the stage with Dave. That's actually adding to your market. It's someone that you don't know, but that you meet, you form them, and now you've warmed them, right? So that's a lukewarm market. And the other is cold market. Right? So this is through advertising of some sort, okay? Lukewarm would be people that you meet, and referrals. Warm market is people that you already know, all right? So the second stage being the connection of these people, right? Which, again, also furthers the exposure. Number 3 was the presentation. 4 was the close. 5 was the follow-up and mobilization, okay? Remember, I said 6 figures can be made from here to here. Why? Because a smaller business can be done with these things with one person. One person can do these things, right? And depending on how much you want to make or how big of a business you want to build, there's only so many hours in a day that you can actually do these functions, all right? But anyone in this room can do these particular functions. If you want your business to grow beyond you, all right, and you can make 6 figures, by the way, doing this. If all you did 40 hours a week was these 5 things, you're easily going to make a 6-figure income, easily. You can even make a couple $100,000 a year, depending on your skill set. So if, for example, we talked about this yesterday, right, if your closing ratios are 10%, and how many of you have a 10% or more closing ratio? Let me ask this question. How many of you have no idea what your closing ratio is? Okay, so look at that. Let me see your hands again. You don't have any idea what your closing ratio is. Okay, guess what? It's okay right now that you don't know what your closing ratio is, but don't you ever, when I ask that question again, don't you ever not know what your closing ratios are. How many of you are in business? The basketball girl came out for a minute there. Who doesn't know their closing ratios? Okay, let me see your hands. I want to see your faces. Who doesn't know their closing ratios? Who's a grad and doesn't know their closing ratios? Really? It means you're not tracking. You're not in business if you are not tracking. You are playing around. You're playing around. This is like some kind of game for you. you're not tracking, you have no idea where you're going. If you're not tracking, you don't know where you're screwing up. You also can't project what your future is if you're not tracking. If you're not tracking, you can't project anything for the future. Not only that, if you're not tracking, you can't duplicate. Tracking is hugely important. Now, handsome, I just love you. You hate numbers, don't you? Yes. Which is why you don't track, right? But tracking is really super important because tracking tells you, okay, am I the right person to be doing this part of the job? That's one thing. The other thing that tracking tells you is, holy crap, I probably am the right person doing this job. I'm pretty darn good at closing, which means I need to hire other people to do everything else. Because if I'm good at closing, then that's what I should be doing most of the time. Do you understand? That's what I should be focused on is getting more deals, closing more deals, which then means what? You have to hire other people to do what? All the other work, because the closer creates the work. The closer of the deal creates the work for everybody else. Does that make sense? That's the one that slays the deer. Bring it home, somebody else cleans it. Okay? So if you don't like tracking, what does it make sense to do? Hire somebody else to do the tracking. Exactly. And then the tracking helps you to set up a model for your business to know, A, are we profitable? Are my activities the right activities that I should be doing? You can find an emerald that loves to track. There might be somebody already within your organization that likes to do that kind of thing, and they naturally are bent towards numbers, and it could be a part-time thing, and it doesn't have to be like you have to turn into someone that you're not in order to track. Now, for those of you that are in direct sales and you're just getting started, don't start a bad habit by not tracking. Don't start a bad habit by not tracking. If you're brand new to the business, let's get serious about this. See, the worst thing about a home-based business is that there's not enough skin in the game. That's the worst thing about it, is that it is too easy to build. That's the worst thing about it. It's the easiest business on the planet to build. I'm going to say that again. It's the easiest business on the planet to build. There's no other business that's easier than a home business. Some of you are like, really? Yeah, it's so easy. How much capital do you need? The max capital you need in a home business might be what? 10 grand? 10 grand? Well, zero's worse than 10 grand. Zero's way worse than 10 grand. So let's say the highest buy-in on a home-based business is $10,000. Is there anybody here that has a higher buy-in? $11,000? Is there anybody that has a higher buy-in than 11 grand? Nope. Okay, yeah. That business has more skin in the game, which requires more commitment out of people. The ones that cost nothing to get into business is no commitment from anybody, which means you have to create the commitment out of nowhere. You have to create the commitment. So if I was in a deal where there was no commitment required, I'm going to create a package that requires commitment. I'm going to create a package of products that they have to have, that they have to eat, that they have to use, and I'm also going to add training on top of that package. I'm going to add the $499 ticket to First Step Success in San Diego to that package. I'm going to add the script books, both of them, to that package. I'm going to add Unlimited Success to that package. I'm going to create out of thin air a $1,000 package in order for someone to get started. That's what I'm going to do. And why am I going to do it? Because they ain't going to do anything if they don't have skin in the game. If there's no risk, there's no reward. And the human body knows this. The human mind understands if there's no risk, there's no reward. If I get something for nothing, what do I know? It's nothing. It has no value. If it has no risk, it has no value. So remember what I told you yesterday, that I was closing deals, at 19 years old of how much? $5,000. That was in 1988 and 89. Do you have any idea how much money $5,000 was at that time? Inflation doubles every 10 years. Do the math. So if you don't have enough skin in the game yourself, you will not have a commitment. Your commitment level largely is determined by how much you got to put in and how much you can lose. Your commitment level is determined by how much you can lose. Time and money. That's what has to be lost. Otherwise, there is no rising up of a commitment. So why is it that there's more kids that quit out of college when they do not have a high-level degree that they're going after versus the ones who are going for a doctorate or to become a doctor, a physician, a brain surgeon? What's that? What's $15,000? So 15,000. She said Chris said that the inflation adjustment for 28 years was $15,000. So the packages I was selling in today's money was $15,000. 15 grand. I'm a 19 and 20-year-old kid. So therefore, when you're selling a package like that, you gotta stand like that. Do you understand? You gotta have the posture of that, hey, this is what it takes. This is the cost, man. Period, end of story. Either you're in or you're out. I am not gonna beg you to go make a 6-figure income, and all it costs is 15 grand to do it. And at that time, whoa, man, 50,000 in 6 months in today's money. That's a pretty good chunk of change, man. That's all I gotta say. That wasn't bad for a little kid.